Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're bringing the best and the brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today is Krish Ramineni, CEO and co-founder of Fireflies.ai. Krish is a UPenn grad and formerly one of the youngest project managers at a little company called Microsoft. And Fireflies is an AI voice assist that helps transcribe, take notes, and complete actions during meetings. I think I'm going to have to check that out. I kind of need it. And Krish launched Fireflies to an overwhelming demand and success in early 2020 at a time we could certainly use all the assistance we could get as we figured out this new way of working together. So let's hear more about Krish's story and how he got off the ground. Let's get into it. Krish, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Adam. Really excited to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Awesome. And thank you so much for joining me. And as we were talking about, before we hit record, I love to hit the rewind button. I love to go back into my guest journeys and your story. You made strides pretty early, growing up in Silicon Valley in that ecosystem. What were some of your earliest memories of inspiration in the startup world? I'd love to hear, where that first spark came from.
Yeah, so growing up around a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of startups, as a kid, that was just something commonplace. You'd hear about Facebook coming out in the backyard, hear about Dropbox becoming really big. So these are all tools that we would use every single day. And that was something that we were quite surprised to just see and use and get overwhelming excitement around, whether that was in high school or even college. But I think, growing up, I actually personally didn't think I was going to go into the technology field. I was going into the medical route. So that was
that an influence of your parents? I mean, I love to kind of like, were your parents entrepreneurs? May I ask, what were their professions?
Yeah. So on my father's side, there's definitely entrepreneurs in the film business back in India. And they were doing other businesses as well, real estate, film, a lot of these different things. On my mom's side, there's a lot of doctors. Like my grandfather's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor, several cousins are doctors. So it was just like that was something that we grew up with, thinking you were going to pick one or the other, right? You're going to pick engineering and entrepreneurship, or you're going to pick medicine. And I felt like I wanted to do something in the medical field. And as I went through my first semester of college, I realized, the amount of impact that you can have in technology is massive. And how can you touch the lives of many, many people, right? That's when all these crazy apps were coming out. You press a button, you get food delivered to you. Right. You press a button, you get a car coming to you. And I said, I want to build something that can touch a lot of people. And that actually pushed me towards engineering and entrepreneurship.
And even going back to your youth a little bit, were you entrepreneurial as a kid? Did you, sell? Did you do it sounds so old school when I say, do you have a paper route, right? Like, who the fuck is that? Like, pardon my French, right? I envision the kid on the bike and now I'm dating myself. You ever remember that game Paperboy? I mean, I don't know how old you are, right? And you would have to throw the papers and break the windows and everything. I'm going to actually have to find one of those simulator games, by the way, after this call and see if I could play Paperboy because I'm kind of jonesing. But I go on a rant. Did you have any entrepreneurial kind of, activities when you were younger?
Honestly, growing up, it was limited. It was more of playing sports and being very, competitive and athletics and education, studying. Like, it was more of that. But there were a few instances growing up, a few childhood things that made me realize these are very interesting opportunities. One is, I used to play this game as a kid growing up called Age of Empires, and it was an absolute favorite. Until then, I didn't really think about business, right? Like, it was actually funny. That game inspired me to say, like, hey, I might not be that bad at business. And so for those that don't know,
Yeah,
Age of
please enlighten
Empires,
us.
yeah, Age of Empires is this real-time strategy game where you start out with very minimal resources, and your opponent is on the other side of the map. They're starting out with minimal resources. It's usually wood, gold, food, and you have to build an entire empire within 20 minutes, and then you have to go and take over your enemy's base or your opponent's base. And so you're managing an economy, you're managing a military, you are building constructions, you're fortifying. And so you're like learning all of this process management, or learning to like manage all of these different things and how to optimize it. And there's a real math and science to the thing. And I learned that, much later in life, when I took up the game again in my free time.
How did you perform, when you picked the game back up versus when you were younger? Did you have all those crazy new thoughts and strategies? Like, shit, if I knew what I knew now back then, how much more you would have dominated?
Yeah, during the pandemic, I got together with a bunch of my old college friends and high school friends that used to play this, and we would the only way you can socialize during the pandemic was hop on like a Zoom call and then play the game in the background. We'd have our headsets on, and we'd play, and I would realize, okay, how do I need to win? So I would learn about strategy and how you do resource management. How do you time certain things? You need to hit things by a certain period in time. And so, yeah, when I was a kid, I was just playing for fun, and I loved history. So you can go through all these historical campaigns of like the Mongols or the Persians. And I love the history behind the medieval history. So that's the reason I played it back then. And now it's like, wow, there's so much math and timing involved. It's almost like a brain teaser, or it just helps. It's like a warm-up exercise before I have to go deal with the real world stuff, right?
It's like your batting practice.
Work. Yeah, it is. It is very exciting. It keeps me sharp when I go into business.
So let me ask you this: you're a West Coast kid. Why decide to go East Coast to UPenn?
Yeah, so at that time, I was actually thinking, okay, if I'm not going to do medicine, what's another opportunity? Like you're really, to be honest, looking at lucrative fields at that time, like law, legal, finance. So when I went to Penn, I said, okay, I'm not going to be a doctor. So let me go into finance and let's see what people are doing in private equity and Wall Street. And I didn't want to run a business by just looking at, the financial numbers at the top. I wanted to be operational, right? So a lot of these, to be an investor, you're just looking at metrics and saying, okay, what do I cut? What do I buy? But I wanted to actually go in and roll up my sleeves and actually help people and build something. And I'm very much a product person. So as a product person, engineer, designer, building things with my own hands, so I ended up, even though I went there, I ended up coming back to the West Coast. I went to Microsoft.
Yeah, we're gonna jump into Microsoft in a moment there, but let's talk, vibes. In college, I mean, even when I was in school, there was still that very entrepreneurial spirit, even more so these days. Was there a difference, vibe wise, entrepreneurial vibe wise, that you had in spades being on the West Coast, and now you're at UPenn, you're here on the East Coast? How did that affect you, or did it not at all?
That's a great question, because
it's a real thing, right? It's a real
difference for sure. At Penn, there was entrepreneurship on campus, but it was less technology based, and it's more technology enabled. So they were trying to solve brick and mortar problems, or solving problems and applying technology to do those sort of things. So there were some companies that were doing analytics in stores, right, to help store owners track their merchandise. Whereas in the West Coast, you're looking at virtualization software, VMs, machine learning, deep learning, a lot of hard tech, deep tech. That was the biggest difference.
But would you go? Can I go out on a limb and say how important that perspective was to be a well-rounded entrepreneur and operator?
I think I've seen entrepreneurship being respected and valued on the East Coast, because so many people were in finance, and I was this one tech guy that was interested in entrepreneurship. So I stood out in the crowd, and I got to be on a lot of these clubs that I was part of, and departments that I was able to run inside these clubs. I was the go-to entrepreneur. How do we take this and how do we scale it up? Okay, let's go talk to Krish. He'll know how to do this. We're doing this operation. So a lot of kids from Wharton, great, they have great business ideas, but then you need to add the technology part in order to scale.
Operations.
Today, everything is a technology business. So
yeah, I mean, so you found yourself with your tool belt was growing. Your tool belt was growing with all these pieces in it. So you graduate and you have these thoughts. And why Microsoft? Was that a target for you? And tell us a little bit about for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about the application and interview process. Because I love when I talk to people at any kind of Mang. Now it's not Mang, it's not Fang, and any of the Mang companies. Pull back the curtain. Tell us a little bit about that journey, some of the tricks of the trade to get in, and how'd you do it?
Yeah, at the time I had a few other offers, and I wasn't really keen on going to Seattle. I wanted to go back to California, and I had a return offer at another technology company that I had interned at in Silicon Valley. I would have been right back home, and so Seattle wasn't on the top of my list. But the Microsoft interview was very exciting. I remember I went on campus, just like all these students, during a campus recruiting fair. Talked to one of the product managers from Microsoft that was there. And then he said, yeah, you seem interesting. And he took my resume. And then later I got a call up saying, hey, you got selected for the on-campus interview at Penn. And I had like a midterm, and then I didn't really have a chance to prepare. I went in on the spot, and we had to do a design experience, right? So they're asking some coding questions, and then they're asking you to do a design problem. So that was on the spot. This was a senior principal person on Penn campus. Luckily that went well. And then the recruiter reaches out saying, hey, we'd like to fly you into Seattle, and we'd like to have you do an on-campus interview. I'm like, I'm not really sure if I'm even going to go here, so I'm not going to prepare. I'm just going to go have fun. They are flying me out there, so why not? Right? That was the mindset. It was amazing, right? Like right from the airport, they had someone with a sign, like pick you up, like a driver.
Make you feel good, the experience.
Make you feel good, yeah. And then they take you to a really nice hotel, great views, amazing food. And just the entire experience was like, wow, this feels like vacation. And then came the interview day, right? The next day. They fatten
you up before they take you ready for the kill, right?
Yeah.
They make you feel comfortable. It's part of the game. See, I can handle it.
That interview day was very, very intense because I was like this undergrad student. I was 20 years old at that time. And then for whatever reason, that cohort that I was interviewing for the product manager role, there were all of these MBA students, business school students. You got people from Stanford, Harvard. Yeah. There were like, I think 12 people, and I was
real
like
competition.
Yeah. So usually I thought I would be competing with other fellow undergrads, but I was competing with MBA business school students. And that was really interesting. So I'm like, I hope I'm interviewing for the right thing.
Am I in the right room here?
Yeah, I thought I was. Am I in the right room? And so the first interview went really well because it was actually like, they're like, okay, we get it. You solve all these product stuff, design stuff, your tech stuff. For this question, I want you to help design something that's completely non-technical, right? Like something that has nothing to do with software.
They want to see how your brain works.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow. And that was very interesting. And so I was thinking about all my experiences. I remember growing up, being in like the family when I'd go to India for vacation, like the film business, like how film distribution happened and how film production happened and how people pick movies. It's very different from the US because usually you have a single producer, they're financing all of this. And, a lot of careers and lives are dependent on that movie going out. So I talked about that process and how you can de-risk film success, like maybe building an algorithm to find, the best script, right? So like it was completely off the wall, and
you just pulled it out of your ass, like you literally just pulled it out of thin air, right?
Well, I said like let's start with the problem that a lot of these people, because they're spending years making these movies, and then these movies aren't going to be successful. These producers are going to run dry, or a lot of people are going to lose jobs. And how do you increase in an industry where there's a success rate is like 3 to 4% or 10% for a film? How do you increase the odds of it, and how do you create a successful engine? So I remember reading about Pixar, and Pixar's made fantastic movies. And
there's a formula behind it.
Yeah, there's some formula around it, and how do you build that process? And it was like just able to show that went really well. And the next couple rounds went by. Like there was like 5 interviews, I believe, that day. After my 4th interview, because each interview goes higher and higher up the food chain, or the ladder. And after my 4th interview, I'm like, you know what? This is pretty fun. I'm actually having fun with these things. I'm like, I'm thinking on the spot, and that's the whole goal. Can you think on the spot? Are you analytical? And then for the last interview, they said, hey, we have a VP that was just about to go to lunch. he wants to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, like, why am I getting a different interview? That's interesting. So they actually pulled me into a meeting, and I had no idea how high this person was. They're like some exec, right? And later I looked him up, and he was like this VP, very high up. And he wasn't even on the interview circuit. He was just like, hey, I have some free time, and tell me if there's someone that's interesting.
They want to see what you're about, right?
Yeah. And so we went through it. We were talking now from all my other interviews were very like technical, low down, where you're building, designing products, to this one is about like, okay, Microsoft has a new CEO. So at that time, Satya became a CEO. And we're thinking about these bigger divisions. And I had done some research, understanding the different things, like how Azure was doing, how Office was doing. And they had just moved to this like subscription model. They're building this like subscription industry versus, selling, CDs and how do you build a recurring business? And so I was kind of talking about like cloud and collaboration software and like what it takes to like compete with Apple and a lot of these other products out there, and what is the unique advantage that Microsoft has in the enterprise. Again, this was a 20-year-old kid, literally like from the knowledge I had. And I was just talking to this exec, and he said, you know what, that was actually really good. And they actually pulled me in because they said you were doing awesome, and they wanted me to talk to you. They said, you got to talk to this kid. And that was a lot of relief because I thought I was in trouble. Like, was that
more of a casual conversation, like just you and I just chatting right now, like versus a structured interview?
It started off as a structured interview, and then he said, like, let's set that aside and let's have just a conversation. Like, we're working together on this. Like, and it was like, because this is a VP, he's going to talk high level, right? So that was very interesting. And then I got a call back a week later saying we'd really love to have you. And I was like, I want to go back to California. Took a decision, they gave a great offer and a team that I was really interested in. So I ended up saying yes, and I went to Seattle.
And I love you sharing that information. Now, as somebody, and I'm jumping ahead, and we're going to get back to the origin story of Fireflies. We're talking multiple rounds at Microsoft. There's a lot of chatter out there, especially in the last couple of years, being a candidate-driven market, candidate experience, the job experience of tightening up that process. But would you say that that many rounds, how many rounds? We'll call it like at least 5, right? Were necessary for you to make a decision, and B, on the other side, equally for the company to have proper due diligence, to make that hiring decision.
Yeah. And Microsoft seasoned veterans in this, and they probably interviewed thousands and thousands of people. And the recruiters are quite busy. So I had to kind of go through, I didn't go through like a conventional, because usually if you get through as a referral, usually you stand higher. College recruiting is usually intense because you're competing with hundreds of other kids on campus. At Penn specifically, a lot of the people that they took were people that were, that we had this program called M&T, Management and Technology, people that are studying business and engineering at Penn, and they're like the cream of the crop, right? M&T is what it's called. And so usually those are the people that are getting these PM roles, because it's not like your conventional software engineering role. You're a product manager. And Microsoft was one of the first companies to start this thing saying, hey, let's take an undergrad or new grad and teach them how to be a product manager, right? And usually in the past, you had to have 5-10 years of experience before getting to that role as a PM. So they started this program, and then other companies started to follow, right? Facebook and Google have an APM program, Associate Product Manager programs. So already you're going into a position of where there's responsibility, and you have to be multidimensional, right? You have to be well-rounded. You can't just be like an engineering or design type person.
Multifaceted, absolutely.
Savvy person that talks high-level BS. You have to know your stuff. And I think the Microsoft PM roles, at least when I was interviewing, were far more technical because their PMs, they expected their PMs to have been engineers.
There's a baseline, right? There's table setter just to even have the conversation.
And you're working on more technical problems. When I joined the group that I was in, I was like, holy crap, this is overwhelming. This is crazy because a lot of this, because we were doing deep level, building analytics engines and all of these sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, this is a very technical a role. Not just any random person would do it. You have to have a computer science type background.
Yeah, it's pretty multifaceted. Hey everybody, first I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me and my guest on the podcast. This show is my canvas to showcase amazing people from the world of recruiting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, and unpack their career journeys for everyone to learn from. But this show is also a business generator for me, as well as creating thought leadership and endless amazing content. And I've taken what I've learned in the past 3 years and over 200 recorded and 100 live shows and distilled it down into a digital playbook that I call the Pause Course. Now you could learn how I build, manage, and produce the podcast and use it to drive real business development and relationships. Today, I'm sharing all of my secrets behind the podcast, and you can get it all at thepausecourse.com. This course is for anyone, whether you're starting out or an advanced podcaster using it for B2B and B2C. It's filled with all of my insights, learnings, tips, tricks, and templates. So get it now at thepausecourse.com and learn all my secrets. Thanks. So correct me if I'm wrong, you were on the Office product, right?
Yes, I was in Office. Yep.
Right. So at what point, because you weren't at Microsoft for too long before Fireflies, like tell us the origin story. Was there a specific problem that you saw with the Office suite that triggered this idea? And like part B on that one was like, and I'm sure you'll get there with the story, like, was it always your intention to go out on your own?
Yeah. So both of those were, expect the unexpected is what I always believe. So the reason I had a fantastic time at Microsoft, I got promoted within the first 8 months that I was there, 8-9 months that I was there, within the year. And which I heard was rare, and it was just a great opportunity in general to be there. And I really enjoyed my time there. I got used to my work. I enjoyed like being around my colleagues. And the only reason I had left was like I got an opportunity to go to graduate school at Cambridge. And as a kid, I've always wanted to go to London and experience going to a school like that. So that was a really interesting opportunity. So after my time, at Microsoft, I basically told my manager I have this grad school opportunity. I see myself finishing this and then potentially coming back. So I hadn't actually thought about going headfirst into doing a startup. It was usually I had 2 months before graduate school started at Cambridge, and so I flew over to Boston and MIT, where one of my friends was graduating, and I decided to just hang out for the summer. I said, "Hey, you're graduating. Let's hang out." And we ended up. There was a really nice VC that said, "Hey, you can use our office space here." Near Seaport. It was really beautiful office space. There's no one in there. You guys can work. So there was a whiteboard. There was a conference room.
A little bit of an incubator going on there.
Yeah. So it was great. We were the first people in there because they had just started this like VC firm on the East Coast. So very nice people. Along the way, I have to say that there have been many people that have been very kind to us and that have encouraged our dream. So that was really like the stirring point, right? So we'd go into the office every day. We'd like just be working on different ideas. And my co-founder, Sam, we had worked on many different things while in college. So hackathons, different projects.
So you knew Sam from college?
I did know Sam from college. We went to different schools. He went to MIT. I went to Penn.
Right, during your college time.
We met through mutual friends, and we used to work on projects remotely. Like every evening, we'd go on like a video conferencing, and then we just like collaborate. So I actually worked with Sam for 2 years before I ever even met him in person.
And that's a critical point too, because I wanted to ask you, how, because I think there's so much learning. And A, does everybody need to have a co-founder? And B, when you are looking for a co-founder, like what is it about Sam that is it what I hear from when I talk to founders or co-founders? It's the complementary skill sets, attitudes, and approaches, and not alignment on vision, alignment on certain things operationally, but having opposing viewpoints is really beneficial.
I would say, we were more similar in a sense where there were actually a lot of similarities that helped drive that in the early days. So for example, like Sam and I are both product engineering oriented. We didn't have like your typical sales and marketing experience that, usually you'll have this business guy and then you'll have this like engineering guy. So in our case, we are very much invested in building product and making sure we build something that people can buy without having to talk to a salesperson, right? When you think about business software, today you just go in, you swipe your credit card and you purchase Fireflies. That's how it works, right? So that was a really, really interesting thing. So our values, right? Because when we looked at the business space, there's a lot of people that had really crummy products and they would just like throw sales at you. Like if you go to a SaaS product and you're trying to buy it, they say you can't even test or try the product out. You have to talk to a salesperson first, right? So we said, we are not going to be that. That's not going to be our DNA. Our DNA is going to be product first. And we're going to just focus on really good engineering. So those were the things that were really good. I would say I was more on the conservative side of the technology curve because I'm more skeptical. Like there are things that I don't believe at face value until I really see it and I dig into it. So it's just like, hey, this technology is going to be this good, or transcription is going to be this accurate in the next 18 months. Yeah.
So why Fireflies? Where was the consumer need for this?
Yeah. So there weren't any specific products that I worked on at Microsoft that inspired me to start Fireflies. It was more of my own work experience, right? One is we spend a lot of time in meetings, especially at a larger corporation like Microsoft. The natural thing is say, add that to my calendar. We'll set up a meeting next week. That's usually the default way to communicate. So there was just so many meetings, especially as a PM. You're in like
it's
5-6 meetings a day. It gets like you're talking to customers.
Process paralysis, everyone out there. This is it.
So you're talking to so many people, customers, engineers, your managers, are just trying to get people on the same page. And I said, there needs to be a better way to do this. And I can't like keep track of all of this stuff and then 1,000 emails every day. So that actually inspired me to say like, okay, where do we spend a lot of time and how can we automate, the busy work around that so that I can focus on the things that add value, right? Like I want to focus on the design, the thinking, the engineering, not like the administrative stuff. So that's what inspired us to say like, okay, let's look at the voice space, right? If I'm going to have a meeting and I walk out of that room, 1 hour later, I'm going to forget everything that was said there.
And if you're taking notes the whole time, you're not always focused on what people are saying.
Yes. Or a lot of times people are on their phone, like checking their emails. So see, these meetings are extremely expensive, right? You take all these execs and you put them in meetings, 1 hour meeting is worth like $10,000, right? At the corporate level.
They pause on that for a second because I think that's something that I've talked about before too. And we say how much money is in this meeting, and I've been talking about it for years too. All these bullshit meetings, even going back to the early 2000s when I went into the workforce. I'm like, there's so many people sitting here that either don't need to be here, aren't contributing, have no need, aren't adding value, and just wasting time and money. A lot of time we're billing clients too for it. So it's like, let's figure out how do we really get an ROI in this and have actionable items coming out of it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. There's other products on the market. How are you going to stand out? How does this product stand out than other products out there?
Yeah. So one thing I will say to your point is there are many people who enjoy having meetings for the sake of having meetings. Could
have been an email. Could have been a text.
Yeah. The process of it. So that's like something I absolutely did not like. And I wanted to change that culture. So with Fireflies, we wanted to build a product where anyone can have their own assistant that comes in and takes notes for them, right? An AI assistant that joins your meetings, transcribes all of that. So first one was like the technology curve, right? Like I was more skeptical, like, can this technology actually get better? And Sam was much more optimistic in that regard, saying, hey, it's like 80% when we're starting, but I believe it'll be 95%, in the next couple of years. And here's some things that we can do. So that also itself is a technology barrier that you're trying to break. How do you build something accurate? And then how do you build this at scale? Like Fireflies today joins, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of meetings, all right, where it's a participant on the meeting. So the way our system works is when your Zoom call starts, an AI note taker joins as a participant. It's a bot. And then it takes the notes for you while the meeting is going on. How do you scale that up in real time to so many people and process crazy volume? So initially you're starting with cool technology. Now you need to build like scale. Like think about like Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp. Like when you're sending those billions and billions of messages, how do you scale that? That's incredibly difficult. So we're like working on voice, right? So we're going to have the same challenges. Like we're doing voice. Now we're also doing video. And then we're doing transcription, huge payloads of data. It's almost like, think about like a Twitch stream, right? You're like having constant like people like all the time on it. Like now we're doing that for business users. So the bar is even higher because reliability is even crazier. So that was definitely a crazy experience.
So what was one of those first mistakes, or maybe it was an assumption that you guys made that you learned the hard way in building a business? I mean,
well, it's not a mistake, but it's a mistake you have to make at that time to realize. So one is in the early days, you're going to just try to throw things together to move as quickly as possible. So you may use like tools and other stuff that are expensive, might break. So you are duct taping a lot of different pieces together to just see if the prototype will work, right? I think today, though, the bar is a lot higher for a minimum viable product. So you can duct tape something, get feedback, but do not go to product with the duct tape thing. It worked in the past, by the way. I read about
you could duct tape an MVP.
Yes, But there were some companies in the past where they would duct tape it for
Ship
10
it.
years. And then it would constantly add a lot of technology debt, make it harder and harder to make changes, right? So analogy I like to say is you should engineer it properly once you know this is what you're going to do it. So actually go back, build it from scratch, which we've done twice at Fireflies. Because otherwise, what's going to happen when it's live is you're going to need to fix a pipe leak, but you're not allowed to turn off the water. That's how hard it is if you're doing that. Yeah.
Clip, timestamp, clip. We're putting this one out there. I heard in an interview you gave early on, at which point you were more focused on adoption than monetization. Let's unpack that one a little bit for everyone out there.
Yeah. In the early days, you have to like realize and ask yourself, why do people even care about this, right? And why are people going to give me the time of day to want to use a service like this? So you had to learn about what people care about. Like attention is everything, right? Like it's something that people have to care about using. So they see this note taker on the meetings. Okay, they're seeing this transcript, but how do you add value to that transcript? No one's going to go through a 20-page transcript. So how can we allow someone to go through a 1-hour meeting or transcript in 5 minutes and find all the information that they need? So we started building different features and functionality. Like you can press a button and Fireflies will suggest all the action items from the meeting. Or you press another button, it'll show you all the questions that were asked by Adam on the meeting. Right? It can even tell me how much I spoke on that meeting versus how much Adam spoke. It'll tell me which parts of the call had negative sentiment or positive sentiment. So now by filtering and scanning through, right, I can go through that entire meeting and know the parts that I care about, right? I can go through it at 2x speed. Let's say there's something that was really interesting, right? Like that you just said. I can go highlight that segment of the transcript and say, create a soundbite. So it's a feature request or like something that was like an amazing little snippet. Now I can go just share that 30-second clip rather than share the entire meeting with my team.
I love it. And how good is this technology also for the recruitment process too? If I'm talking to a candidate and having that screen with them, and now I want to go to the hiring manager and say, hey, I talked to Krish, here's something that stood out, and you could actually hear that clip and I could earmark it versus just taking my word for it. Complete side note, I don't even have this question out there. Is this like legal evidence? Is there any kind of legal ramifications? Like if we have a conversation that this transcript could hold up in court? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I don't know about the holding up in court part, but what I do know is you have to follow the same call compliance rules that other products have. So, for example, when you're recording in Zoom, it'll say like, "Hey, I'm recording this." Usually, the standard process is different states will have different things. Some states you don't have to get two-party consent. Other states you do. We generally recommend that. Like, hey, when you call up customer support, right, and they say this call is being recorded for quality assurance, like the same way, just let the people know that you're using Fireflies to record and transcribe and take notes, and offer to share the notes afterwards if it's going to be helpful for them too. And if not, you can kick Fireflies out of the meeting. So you want to
have an off-the-record conversation, you kick the bot out.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens during a live meeting. It's like, hey, we're going to go into a part that's private. Let's remove Fireflies from the meeting for this part of the call. Right. So consent is everything. Consent's that's important when it comes to call recording. But the funniest thing is this meeting compliance thing has turned into a huge viral opportunity for us because all of these people are, bringing up Fireflies on the call. Say, hey, by the way, I have Fireflies. Or someone will say, hey, what's this AI note taker? So it starts a conversation, and that conversation gives us availability, awareness. And I was just reading like a survey that a customer sent and said, hey, you really need to start a referral or affiliate program because I feel like I've sold more Fireflies on my demos than my own product.
Right. I do that with my stuff all the time.
Everyone, and I probably got you 50 people just using Fireflies through me. And I would like to get on this affiliate program. And I'm like, all right, we need to start an affiliate program, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of funny too. And the data has to be encrypted on the back end too. Like you're just collecting so much data and some of it's proprietary and some serious conversations going on. There has to be a ton of data security on the back end, right?
Yeah, there is a lot more. Like we're SOC 2 compliant now. And we're also just scaling up so that we can support larger and larger businesses, enterprises. There's, we have to think about security at every level of building new features, the implications of that. Also, as we have larger teams using it, access controls and privacy. So like maybe I don't want someone else on the team to listen to a recruiting interview I had, right? Because it's private. So I want to put it in a private channel. Yeah, I want to put it in a private channel so that other people, only the HR team has access to it. So similar to
There's a lot.
Slack and Dropbox and all these other platforms, privacy, access management is becoming a bigger thing as the team sizes grow.
Krish, let me ask you this: how many folks do you have full time right now?
We have about almost 100 people. I would say like
Wow,
90 or so people.
that's crazy. And correct me if I'm wrong. Mostly distributed remote.
Yeah, we're a 100% remote company, like from origins. This was even before the pandemic. This is just something we chose. Again, contrarian views, right? We said, like, let's not be a sales first company. Let's be a product first company.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to only hire in Silicon Valley. We can hire globally, and we can build a globally distributed team. And in fact, Fireflies is more valuable for distributed companies. And actually, we go into the pandemic, that's exactly what happened. So for us, we didn't have to really change much of our operations. In fact, it just made it more front and center. So we're
native.
around 15 countries
native.
now. Yeah.
So, but what are some of the challenges? When you have folks in different time zones all around the world, how do you keep everyone on the same page with a global remote organization? What are some of those tricks or best practices?
Time zone
not even
overlap.
tricks.
Yeah, time zone overlap is really important. So we are a 24/7 operations, meaning Fireflies is working 24/7. And so there is some time zone overlap between handoffs between engineers on the same team. Every team we try to get overlap. It also helps us build a global product from day one so that people in other countries can also use Fireflies. And you get the perspectives of other people, like the diversity, to build a product, right? For example, we were building out some stuff because in the future we want to roll out foreign languages. Right now we support English transcription. So we have a teammate who's Portuguese, and they're like looking at this model and saying, hey, it's actually pretty good. Fireflies is doing pretty well for Portuguese. Like let's incorporate that language model. So there's this amazing stuff that you get with culture and diversity when you bring people around all different parts of the world.
Well, I mean, think about that technology for your own team. I mean, exactly to that point, like somebody's native Portuguese speaker, maybe their English isn't so well, and you're having a big meeting with English speakers, and then they could take that and the translation from it, the output of the meeting, and they could digest it. I mean, the communication improvement. I mean, this is fantastic. What has been, the biggest challenge as a founder and a leader with scaling?
The biggest challenge is you have to learn to let go of your Legos. You can't do all the building blocks yourself. You can be a perfectionist, but you have to pick 2 or 3 things you want to be a perfectionist at, and you have to scale up your hiring and trust, right? At the end of the day, when hiring great people, it comes down to trust. Like, are you going to trust them to do a better job than you, right? That's ultimately the thing. And when you're giving someone the Lego blocks, it starts with that trust. The moment you start to micromanage, that's when you realize that there's a lack of trust. And usually, right, there was something that one of Elon's employees also said, like, someone is about to be fired or let go at Tesla if Elon is having to like handhold them and micromanage every decision that's being made, right? Because that's like a lack of trust, and it's only going to go down. So it's hard to recover from that. So I think starts with hiring. And also raising the bar, right? Like you might have started saying, okay, we're going to take 7 out of 10. That's okay. Early days, you just need people like whoever believes in the mission, can we come in? And now you raise the bar, and the next bar is 8 out of 10. You want a 9 out of 10. You want a 10 out of 10. Like, so you keep raising the bar on yourself and also the new hires. And then that instills that culture to everyone to raise their game. So yeah, fantastic. Hiring, culture, scaling, delegating, you need that in order, because you can't be at 100 different places.
I love it. And I'm not going to sit here and ask what the 3, 5, 10-year plan is, but what is that next kind of milestone for you professionally and building out Fireflies?
Yeah, for us, we've had the fortune of being able to serve 60,000 plus different companies. We want to keep scaling that. We want to make Fireflies more integral to the different systems that people use every day. We're going to do a couple big things this in the coming year. One is we're going to support multi-language so that we can really support global users. So multiple foreign languages, Spanish, French, all of that is on the roadmap. We're working on really becoming a collaborative platform, because as more people use Fireflies, I want them to not even have to wait till after the meeting to do all of the sharing and workflows. During the meeting itself, like how can you get work done? How can you push things or your action items? Like by the time I leave the meeting, can I have like all the things that I need to do, all the kickoffs that I need to do afterwards done? So we were trying to make it a more collaborative and real-time product for you guys.
I love it. And I wish you best of luck. I'm going to check it out for myself and my teams and my clients as well there too. So let's bring it home here. Krish, this show is my masterclass. I mean, I literally created my own masterclass, having the opportunity to have conversations with such smart and accomplished folks like yourself. What is the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every single day of your life?
So the best advice that I've ever gotten is when you're worried about something, it's only going to get more if you don't take action. So the most important thing is just start, right? Even if the problem seems impossible, start the most important thing you need to at that point in time, right? Whether it's just getting in contact with the person, sending an email, or starting to look at the analytics, like wherever the problem is, the more you dwell on it, or the more you let it sit in the back of your mind, the more headspace it's going to take. Whereas if you know there's going to be a problem or a potential for a problem to occur, start having that conversation early, be proactive, and you'll then realize it is not an insurmountable thing. You can actually get over it, and you'll realize more often than not to enjoy dealing with those challenges. So taking that first step, no matter how small it is, and then making that a habit, right? Consistency, because usually all of us like to, set things off for the side. I'll take care of it after the weekend. Can procrastinate. I'll have 2 minutes, 2 hours before the presentation to prepare. Just take the first step. Just do the first 2 slides, right? No one's asking you to finish all 20 slides. And then that naturally you will get into the flow.
That's what we're talking about, folks. Real actionable advice here. And Krish, last but not least, you look back on your life and career, and there's had to be those tough times. There had to be those times where you were clawing and trying to figure things out, and you had to reach down deep inside and harness that inner tenacity to pull yourself forward. And on the flip side, when you want to show gratitude, appreciation for your success, what you're building, this legacy that you're building for yourself and your family, what is your compass? What keeps you focused? Krish, what is your North Star in life?
Yeah, so I believe that success is rented. It's not automatically owned. And if you take your eye off the ball, you will lose it. So you are paying your dues every day in terms of the work that you are putting in. And for me, the compass that drives what I do and everything that I think about is how can I build something that actually makes people's lives easier? Because if you can do that, you will get attention. You will get admiration, you will get people talking about you, and you will also be able to monetize. But it's about how can I build something that is essential, right? How I want to build something that's a painkiller and not a vitamin. I need something that's going to actually change people's lives. And I think that if you start optimizing for impact, all of the other stuff, money, revenue, attention, all the other stuff will follow naturally. So optimize for impact.
There's been fantastic conversation. So much gold, so much wisdom here. Krish, thank you so much for joining me and hanging out with me for one moment.
Absolutely, Adam. Loved it.
Good stuff. And everyone, if you want to find out more, please go to Fireflies.ai. I'm going to link it up in the show notes. Everyone can check it out there. Krish, where could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Where could they learn more?
Yeah, so we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. Feel free to connect with. So I have my own public IG, which is Krish Ramineni. And then you can also find us at Fireflies.ai on Twitter or on LinkedIn.
Good stuff. This is what the show was all about. Actionable advice from people who are doing it in the moment. Krish, thank you so much for joining me. And everyone listening at home, thank you so much for spending your time with Krish and I. I know how valuable your time is. If this episode resonated with you, if you learned something, sharing means caring. If you have any questions, email me, adam@nhptalentgroup.com. I'll put you in touch with Krish and his team if you got questions there. Follow us on all the social media channels. You know where it is, thepodcast.com. Remember, take care of each other, look out for one another, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.